Welcome to another version of Younger Life. Good morning. I'm Rick Federici.
And I'm Mary Anthony.
Oh, I am so excited about today.
I know, me too.
This is a great show. I'm going
I love
for
when
it.
we're talking about furries. I have, my furry babies are my babies too. So
absolutely. We've got a great guest in studio today. Let's chat a little bit. The doc is back and he's better than ever.
That's right. And I am excited that Dr. Baldwin's joining us again. And we're going to do this periodically for sure, because I feel like a lot of people have questions about their pets, and they might not even be an issue, but just a little, fleeting thought or concern, and think, ooh, I need to remember to ask that. But how often do we remember, or just call to ask a question? We know how busy our vets and our clinics are. They're, super swamped. So it's not easy to just call and ask a random question. So.
Last time you were on, Dr. Scott Baldwin, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Awesome. It's great to have you back. I will say that we got a lot of feedback and a lot of people just have questions.
Mm-hmm.
And depending upon what time of the year it is, it gets a little bit crazy, whether it's
absolutely
ticks, whether it's just checkups, whether it's stuff we're going to chat about today, which I'm really stoked about.
There definitely is different concerns and different questions and issues every season, I would imagine, just because there are different things that pose threats to our pets, and so that's why it's important that you're back.
Thank you.
So is this one of those days where you're going to be crazy? Because I know your schedule is always kind of going all over the place, ours. I'm always, here on the air doing radio. Then we're doing Younger Life. Then I'm out, wearing all the hats. You wear all the hats too at your place.
We wear quite a few hats amongst all of us. Every one of us has multiple jobs, and somebody sits there and goes, "Oh, you're just a doctor. You're just this." No, you're a doctor. You're an advertiser. You're a manager. You're an accountant. You're a God, what aren't you?
Yeah, I know. It's so true.
I guess if you really get down to it, you're a politician. You're you name it. We pretty much cover, in our field especially, we cover about all the hats. And actually, one of my favorite things to do is I like veterinary history, because it really plays a role on the ups and the downs. I mean, if you go back in time, especially west of the Mississippi River, throughout the ages, so to speak, before settlement, medicine, wherever you were, was actually usually done by dentists or veterinarians. There were very few doctors that were west of the Mississippi. So actually, when you see things, if you're watching your old westerns or anything like that, and they talk about, oh, we need to go see Doc. Doc was probably either a dentist, or I guess we got to throw in the barbers too, because truthfully, barber college back then was about as rough, and it still is today. My dad used to be a barber, so I can say this because I've seen some of his texts. Barber college back then was a medical profession.
Really?
Barbers,
Why?
dentists,
I'm curious.
And because back then your barber didn't just take care of your hair; he took care of your skin. He took care of your blood.
True.
He took care, and actually your and there's probably a lot of people out there that know this, because this is always the neatest thing. Your red and white post that you see on traditional barbershops was actually symbolic of, back in the day, even before America, back if you go into Europe, that was setting out the bloody soaked laundry.
Really?
Because they had posts, and that the white was the clean and the red was the blood soaked rags, because they did your barbers. If you didn't have any other medical professions, your barber was also your dentist, was also your...
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so, and it was the same with the veterinarians. So back in the day, so to speak, in the Old West, if you want to go that far, and it's not just the Old West, we'll just touch on that one, but usually there was one medical professional in and I won't even say a town, in a community, or actually multiple communities, and sometimes your medical professional that took care of your animals, or you, or your teeth or whatnot, was one or the other. So profession back then was medical profession was a lot larger scope. And so you didn't see, the shingle, your diploma, that at least in the more rural communities didn't matter. You were the doctor.
You were trained.
Regardless.
So yeah. That makes sense too when you really think about it, especially when you're talking being a vet interchangeable with being a regular, an MD of people, medical doctor of people. That makes sense only because dealing with animals and stuff is so similar to people as far as a lot of the way that we're made.
Well, it is.
So
And the
that's-
last time we were here, I can't remember which one you asked the question, and I said, you know, the physiology books were,
Yeah.
you know, human physiology books at a certain point in the last 50 years were actually based on canine physiology.
Yeah.
And when I went to school, our physiology books were human texts. And so, yeah, it is. It's,
I remembered
there's a
you
lot of
said that,
interchangeability.
and that stuck with me for a little while. Thinking, I see why that makes sense. I do. I see why if you have a vet trained to help birth horses or cows, and someone's in labor, they're going to get the vet. I know that sounds funny, but I understand that thinking. Why they would be interchangeable.
I've learned something new today, and we're not.
I
even a
didn't
few
realize
minutes
the
into
red
it.
and white.
Either
Yeah, I
did
know.
That's what I was going to say.
I didn't understand that. And that's
Dr.
kind of
Baldwin
gross.
with interesting facts on Younger
Yes,
Life.
I love
See, we
it.
need to call him like we're doing our shows live every day.
If we
Dr.
play
Baldwin?
trivia, we're
Yes.
going to have him on.
We want him on our team.
I stink. No one would want me on their team.
Dr. Baldwin, I'm awesome at music.
I'm good at being the scorekeeper.
And you're great at history.
Most of my trivia is pretty useless, so I rarely ever see anything that comes across. I'm like, oh, yeah, I know that.
It feels good, though, when it does, doesn't it?
That was great information.
Yeah,
though.
that is good information. That is. Well, the biggest reason I know that Rick and I had talked, and I said, we have to have you back, because I had come across a little study, and it was just like an article about a study. But it was about, the headline caught my attention about how sugarless gum can be fatal in dogs. So I thought, let me read that. It just struck, it caught my
Sure.
attention, and I thought, how strange that it could be deadly when we chew it. And, I know we're not swallowing it for the most part. I mean, some people do, or apparently on accident. But,
Sure.
I don't understand why it would be deadly. And so it was interesting to read. I'm curious. It just caught me off guard. I could see how easily that could happen. Again, if your dogs are riding with you in the car, which mine often do, they could get it out of my purse, out of the console in the van.
On the floor.
On the floor, please. My van's
Good.
a pit. We have my van's typically a pit. We have 5 kids. Are you kidding me?
Hey,
It's
I was parents with
crazy.
the way, just so you know, to stick up for you and Jeremy and your children. I was thinking it fell out of your purse onto the floor. It was still wrapped.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm thinking wrap too, but it's
Thank
easy
you.
to spill it. You know what I mean? The kids pass it around and spill it, and it's just the way it goes. So I
I'm
too
glad
was
you guys
thinking
were
wrapped.
thinking wrap because I wasn't.
Oh, I was thinking wrapped. Certainly not chewed yet. That would be a whole different set of issues if my kids were putting that on the floor. But no, I was thinking wrapped too. I could just see how easy that can happen. So that led to a ton of little questions that I had, and then brought it up to Rick. It's, let's definitely have the doctor back. And then we had talked about ticks. We had talked to the pharmacist and talking about numerous things, but that sparked for us a tick discussion. So that we get, okay, it's definitely time to
time for
have you
Dr.
back.
Scott to get back in
right.
here.
That's right. So could you start by telling us what's in sugarless gum that it can be deadly to our pets?
Most of the sugarless products, and we're going to go a little bit above and beyond because it's not just gum.
Okay.
But most of your sugarless products nowadays that you have to worry about, and there's a lot of them, are the ones that contain xylitol.
Okay.
And that's actually spelled differently than it sounds. It's XYL. I think it's ITOL. But it's XY as your first
Okay.
name. So if you see something with that, you should probably go, but xylitol is in sugarless gum. It's actually in a lot of sugarless candy. There are some of your sugarless granola bars. I mean,
Really?
if it says sugarless, that's probably what it is. Because xylitol, and don't get me wrong, I didn't know this until I got your questions, and I had to go read what xylitol
Yeah, I was curious
actually
what-
was. I
what
knew
is
I
it?
knew some of the gists about it, but what it is it is an artificial sugar that it comes from plant material.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the first thing. So for the people out there that go, well, you shouldn't be doing it anyhow because it's artificial. Well, no, not really, because it's actually a compound that's taken from corn and raspberries, and I can't remember what the other. There's a combination of fruits and vegetables. Well, what
Really?
it does in the body is it is a sugar-like substance.
Okay.
So in a human's body, there's a large level or large range before you can get toxic. Usually in people, it causes it's a laxative if you get too much. So if you're
okay.
just popping
Wow.
that stuff away, your candy, you with this one, if it's going to cause a problem, it's a laxative. And animals, dogs in particular, because that's where most of your stuff comes from. And they actually found that it causes problems in ferrets too. And so you'll read about how it's dogs, but actually in the veterinary community, we assume that cats are affected too. Pretty much, at least most of our pets anyhow. What it does in the body is it simulates glucose or sugar. Okay. And so in the body, the reason why it's poisonous is in the body, in the dog, and we'll just use dog, but know that everybody out there listening, this is pretty much interchangeably. So if I say dog, I mean pets. In the dog, what it'll do is it hits the brain, and the brain sits there and goes, oh my God, I've got a sugar load. Okay. So it'd be no different than taking in that nice, the pixie sticks or anything else. Yes. They're going to do the same thing, and it causes a sudden increase in the body to drop insulin into the system to try to get rid of all this sugar or to utilize it. Well, what happens is this sugar is not affected by insulin. So what will happen is that insulin causes the rest of the blood sugar to drop precipitously. And at the same time, you still have the xylitol floating in the system, and the brain's sitting there going, I still got a lot of this sugar. I still got a lot of this sugar. And so it keeps the body pumping insulin into the body. So essentially what you get into is a diabetic crisis. Or an insulin overload, or that term is very synonymous. So depending on who's used it, be careful. My diabetic crisis and somebody else's are two separate things. But essentially you get into an insulin overdose. And then most of your signs come from whatever stage that is. You can have the simple vomiting, diarrhea. I got a little bit of this, and it caused a little bit of a spike, and so I got a low blood sugar, and this is in the GI tract, and it's going to do like it does in people and cause a laxative effect, all the way to the other spectrum, which is the amount of insulin in the body spikes so high it sucked out all the regular blood sugar. The xylitol cannot be used by the body. And so now you have literally no sugar in the body. Well, what happens then is you get all your normal insulin overdose effects, staggering, ataxia, which is your stumbling, your change in behavior because your body doesn't know what to do because you basically have no sugar, seizures, coma, death. And so all those are the same, and it actually goes to how the body responds to the whole insulin blood sugar issue. And so that's actually what your problem is it's not that it is poisonous, it's that it sends the body into a insulin dump.
Right. So then you have they would then have super low blood sugar. I'm curious about the coma. I was thinking that when you were talking about how basically their sugar level just bottoms out, it's depleted. So a person, would have those and then go into a coma. Do pets do that then? So, wow, I can't imagine your dog, staggering around and then goes into a coma. What happens? Can that even be treated, or is that definitely a death
supportive
level?
treatment? You get them into your doctor, the emergency clinic somewhere. And with the xylitol, once it's in the system, it's not like you can flush it or anything else. Okay. So it's all supportive treatment. And supportive treatment for now and down the road basically means you try to take care of your symptoms. You're not taking care of the disease, you're taking care of the symptoms. So it's all supportive care. IV fluids, because part of your problem with this whole issue is you actually have a really messed up fluid load in the body. So technically you're to some degree dehydrated. You spike your IV fluids with sugar because you have to try to compete with that insulin. Okay. And you got to push the sugar into the system. Depending on neurologic symptoms or essentially brain, you may have to use some type of a osmotic or diuretic, and what those are things that help to draw fluid back out of the body into the bloodstream. Because some of your issues with the problems with your seizures, coma, etc., is actually swelling in the brain due to the lack of blood sugar.
I have learned so much. Again, now I never would have realized this. And I'm a guy that had my one dog. We had 16 years.
Yeah.
Troy, who just left us recently, 10 years.
Yeah.
And obviously, sometimes, as mentioned, the dogs, or in this case, we're going to refer to everything as pets, get into different things.
Yeah, it happens. It's easy.
Are there listings or like on different foods? In this case, are there things listed for a pet owner, which was one of the things you and I kind of discussed.
Right.
Doc, this question's for you.
Will xylitol actually be listed in the ingredients list? So if you're looking at that, you know to keep it put up away from the dog.
Yeah, it should be.
Pet.
It should say xylitol in there somewhere.
Okay.
As one of your substances in the ingredients.
Okay.
Most of the time on those ones, because xylitol, with how it acts and how it's marketed in the human realm, a lot of times your products will say contains xylitol, because it is. It's one of those things. It's kind of like your products that say contains stevia, or and stevia is another plant derived sweetener. So basically, a lot of our sugar-free sweeteners are actually plant derived,
which is good for us on a human level. That's a little more natural than a
Although
chemical.
that goes back and forth. Remember, we aren't doctors. He is, by the way.
Yeah, we certainly are, but we do have one.
You know, we say this every day on the air. I just thought about that. We always say we're not doctors. We don't even play one.
We aren't, but Dr. Baldwin is.
Our friend is.
We have one today. So, I mean, on a human level, then, that's why, that makes a lot more sense to me. Why it isn't actually poisonous to us, because our body can
responds differently is what it comes down to, and when people go, because we just talked about at the beginning and last visit how physiology is similar, and physiology is similar but not the same, and my favorite one is when people are asking about this, especially if we're talking about drug dosages. And, I can't do that. That's just way too much, because we're Benadryl's a good one, and we won't go on the air, but the Benadryl dose for a 100-pound lab shocks everybody. It really does. And when I get a call in, or I have somebody and they're like, and we've been using Benadryl, it's not helping. I'm like, well, what are you using? Oh, I'm given this amount a day. And I'm like, oh yeah, you just want to sprinkle water on them.
Yeah.
But my favorite one's thyroid medicine or thyroid supplementation, because most everybody knows a hypothyroid person and or a hypothyroid dog. And it's been so long since I've actually had my pharmacology. What I'm about ready to say, if somebody looks it up, may be inaccurate. So I'll start off with that one. But your human dosage for your thyroid supplementation, I believe, is 100 times less than a dog.
Wow.
So a dog that needs thyroid supplementation, their dosages are in we'll just say milligrams, although that's not quite accurate. Whereas if I remember right, a person is in micrograms.
Okay.
And for all you math whizzes out there, you can probably whip off better than I can what the difference between milligram and microgram is. But there's a fairly large difference there. So yeah, you got to be careful with this, because what causes a problem in one doesn't cause a problem in the other. And I know that you had sent, when you had asked me to come on about this, which I think you did, because I knew enough about xylitol probably to sit there and go, be careful and watch it. And that was it. I didn't know it was a plant-derived artificial sweetener, basically, a sugar substitute. So it gave me something to look up and see. And truthfully, in veterinary medicine, xylitol we've only been really dealing with for probably, maybe 10 years.
Really?
Yeah, so it's a fairly new toxin, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I know that you also act on there, and this will go into the difference between human and animal. You had asked about some of our other common poisons, and you had made a comment about Tylenol and ibuprofen, and I really thank you for that one too, because some of our at-home anti-inflammatories or analgesics, whichever term you want, can be dangerous. Tylenol is a good way to, cause liver failure. Ibuprofen can do very much similar things. Both of them can affect kidneys adversely. Both of them can cause stomach bleed. Sorry, I was trying not to use some of the more if I use too much scientific lingo,
right,
or if I really fall back and use a lot of really let's say low grade terminology, please stop me. But aspirin can, if you use the more appropriate aspirin dose for pain, you can cause a lot of bleeding, because that's another one that's different. The true aspirin dosage for animals is huge to get the effect you want. The safety margin, it's aspirin safer in people than it is in animals. Animals take a lot more than people do. Yeah. So basically, when you're looking at aspirin and out of your anti-inflammatories, that's the quote-unquote safest one for the over-the-counter ones. But when you're looking at that, and if you really want to utilize aspirin appropriately, it's not safe. If you're wanting to use it safely, you're not doing a whole lot.
Yeah.
Then the other biggest problem is, I'm sure that most everybody's medicine cabinet's probably kind of like ours. Your aspirin, your Tylenol, and your ibuprofen, since all of us have most all of it, probably sit right next to each other.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you, and if I use any names of anybody out there, it's not meant to be.
Well, let's do it like this. Hold on, Doc.
It's like
All
that.
This
opinions
is our
expressed here
disclosure.
on Younger Life do not reflect those of our management, Younger Life, Gerard Media LLC, or Dr. Baldwin. Let's go for it.
Okay, good. So you reach up to grab your aspirin for Fluffy because you want to, she just hurt herself.
Yeah.
But you accidentally grab that Tylenol, and then the next day she has yellow eyes and yellow skin and vomiting and diarrhea and just laying around just like that dog that might have had the xylitol.
Yeah. Okay.
And now you rush her out. Well, your Tylenol probably caused a acute liver failure.
Okay.
Wow.
So-
Just because you were going to grab that aspirin, but you grabbed the wrong thing, didn't think anything of it.
Well, you know what? This led into a ton of different thoughts for myself when I was reading that article initially about the xylitol, because I think, how easy is it to be getting out, two Tylenol or two any sort of, Tylenol, Advil, Motrin, any
Aspirins,
of those things,
medications, yes.
and drop one
Yeah.
and think,
All
I
the
can't
time.
find it, but your dog will find it. You know?
Absolutely agree. That has
So,
happened.
and it's the same thing with,
Yes.
with babies. They will find those things.
Oh, yes.
So it's very scary. That's why I was curious. Some normal household things that could be poisonous to our pets that might not be to us unless we're taking them in crazy levels. But, if we get a Tylenol, and one extra Tylenol that we take isn't probably going to send us to an ER, where your pet, it sounds like can be, and that's very scary.
Yeah. And you brought up your common household things. We give and try to give. We keep a brochure at the clinic from the ASPCA, and I brought it in today because of this topic.
Oh, great.
It's basically, and now this is just a list of 101 things. Okay, and I'm sure there's people out there going, oh wow, that's large. That's drop in the bucket.
Really?
But the 101 most common things around your home that can be poisonous.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
Okay. We'll go through some of them.
Yeah,
Sure, yeah.
this is great.
I
Yeah.
think it's great information. It's something we don't think about very often because we do typically think our medicines are put up. You try to keep, especially gum and mints, out of the way of the dogs. You know what I mean? But they still can get them. So
Yeah.
go ahead, Dr.
So some of the ones around your home, and these first three we just talked about: ibuprofen and aspirin, acetaminophen, which is Tylenol. Some of your cold and flu medicines actually can be. Now, some of them can be useful, but you really should know, which means that you really need to talk to somebody, which really means that you're going to have to call somebody.
Call your vet, right?
So it's better off just stay away from them. Some vitamins, now that gets tricky, so we'll move away from there. Okay, tobacco products, diet pills. Here's some good ones that everybody go, well, yeah. Drain cleaners. Well, who's going to be drinking drain cleaner?
None of us.
But your lead paint, just like in people. Oil, pesticides, fertilizers. So those are just kind of some of the around your home things. Here's a good one that we'll jump over and pull a few from the harmful foods. Guess what? Number 2 on here is xylitol. So we've got that one covered. Chocolate. Grapes and raisins. A lot of people don't know that grapes and raisins.
I
Really?
know that. My daughter Devin told me about that. Can you explain that, doctor, if you wouldn't
Nobody
mind?
really knows why, but grapes and raisins are, and the toxicity level is all over the place on this, for just even in individual species. But dogs, cats, ferrets, those are your big 3 that you wonder about. Rabbits too. Grapes and raisins under the wrong circumstance. And what I mean by the wrong circumstance, if you have the wrong animal, they'll shut the kidneys down.
Really?
Nobody knows why. Nobody knows what's in them, but there's so many documented cases of that. So yeah, grapes and raisins are toxic. Avocados, and before you get into that, it depends on the species, because sometimes it's the skin, sometimes it's the meat, sometimes it's the nut. So we'll just say avocados. Here are my 2 favorites that I talk about quite frequently: onions and garlic. They're both actually in the same family. But if you go out and get your so-and-so said that I should go get this for parasites, and it's a brewer's yeast and it contains garlic, I'm going to sit there and go, well, you should throw it out. Brewer's yeast actually has some nutritional benefits. The garlic has some really good benefits if you want to shut down the red blood cell production. So it and onions. because onions and garlics come from the same family. Salt, we're not really going to get into that because there is such a thing, whether it's a person or an animal, of salt toxicity. But tea, coffee, because that's actually there's 3 or 4 ingredients in those, just like there is in the chocolate. Essentially a caffeine.
It is caffeine. That's what I was going to ask.
That's one of them. And actually, there's caffeine in chocolate too. So
Right.
But there's 4 or 5 different, depending on what. There's 4 or 5 different products in there, and I'm going to sit there and say that I don't think I could pronounce the couple of them that just jumped to my head anyhow.
Yeah.
So I would probably mess somebody up there who's really big into proper lingo, and I don't remember all of them.
Okay.
Yeast dough. And that's not really so much toxic as to what it does, but that's just something for you guys to know. Now let's get into some of our plants, because everybody usually asks this. And again, this is just a drop in the bucket. This is what the ASPCA, when they've had their calls in, these are the 101 most common things that they hear about. So not all these plants are there, and I'm not going to read them all out anyhow. But lilies. Let's see here. Oh, belladonna, and we won't go into the why, but belladonna actually is a useful medicinal if you go back in time.
What is that?
I've
Belladonna
heard of
is a plant, and actually, it actually was used a lot of times in ancient Europe as one of the poisons that was added to food. That's why you see all the kings and the dukes and whatnot have their food testers.
Wow.
That's one of them. Here's some other ones. Buckeye, since we're close to the Ohio border, and I know that there's probably some Ohio people out there. Buckeyes are poisonous. Let's see, I just said the lilies. Castor beans. They keep coming back to lily because instead of just saying lily, they've actually got them all individualized with the lilies. I saw some cool ones on here that gladiolas, foxglove.
See, this to me is such great information. Like, people don't realize this. I'm like, I'm blown away. The grapes and the raisins I heard of recently.
I would have just assumed
the
choking, but I
flowers.
didn't know there was something in them. Wow.
Yeah.
Because, man, I'm telling you what, if anything hits the floor, my dogs are
That's
like,
mine.
boom, they're on
That's
it.
what's mine. That's exactly right.
You know?
Hydrangeas,
Wow.
rhododendrons. Tried to go through some of these ones that are out there so that just everybody knows. Tulips, wisteria.
Bummer, you've named like all my favorite
Yew.
flowers.
Yeah, yew is a big one. Good news with yew is that has to usually, it's not just the actual growing plant. Honeysuckle. Did I say philodendrons? Hemlock. Well, that's kind of an easy one. We probably shouldn't be growing hemlock anyhow, especially since that's another one of those poisons that was used in ancient Europe. And America, for that matter. So there's quite a few stuff on there.
Poinsettias too, right?
Poinsettias.
Poinsettias.
That one, I agree. I was taught that poinsettias are. I've seen a lot of stuff online, and I have not personally gone through to try to determine how accurate they are or not. There's a group out there that'll say poinsettias are fine. I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I'm not a toxicologist by any stretch of the imagination, so do not, my personal opinion is, poinsettias should be kept away from animals. I've actually had people who've dropped off poinsettias for us at the clinic, which is a nice
It's a very
thought.
nice gesture.
And I will then usually turn around, and if I have a,
Garbage
somebody,
can?
no, I actually, I'll try to get them out to
Take 'em.
places that don't have pets, but could use them. Some nursing homes and whatnot.
I'm
We'll
with
drop
you.
things off
Right.
for them, because I don't, they're not good for us, and I'm not about to have a poisonous plant sitting around at the clinic and then look at somebody and go, well, you really shouldn't have that same thing at your place.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
no, I
Yeah,
try to
that's
get
hard.
rid of them. I try to get them to some place that they do a better job.
Two text messages directly for Dr. Scott. Is there anywhere, Dr. Scott, all the potential health risks associated with the items you're talking about are listed in one reference or manual for pet owners like myself? Great information.
That
That's
is a
a great
great
question.
Probably not all of them, so that you got to take that with a grain of salt. But there are actually some, and probably what I would say
That's a
is
great reference.
the reference, this brochure that we tend to have and try to give out, we give it out to all our puppy and kittens. But the ASPCA is probably, and the Poison Control Center, those would probably be my two areas to go to, because they're probably going to have some of the best References number one, and then if you want a book, they'll probably be able to push you that way. The downfall is, and I like my reading material for both at home and the veterinary information. Well, when I'm looking at medicinal type stuff, my mind tends to go towards the stuff that probably nobody wants on their shelves. When I try to get pharmacopoeias, I got 5 or 6 pharmacopoeias from the last 15 years. I'm slightly pack rat. I don't throw them away because I've made notes in some of them and I don't want to lose those notes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not smart enough to just copy them over into the new pharmacopoeia anyhow, which would probably be just as easy and save some space. But so, if you were to ask me about a book, the ones that I'd think about are essentially veterinary texts, and nobody really wants that, because after you got rid of all the words in there and crossed out all the words that nobody would know or understand, you'd have about 2 pages, and it'd basically just be the list of all the names of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Julie asked,
So-
the second part of that was someone just said, can I pick up one of those reference guides, and what's his number and address?
Well, that's a good point.
If you wouldn't mind.
Telephone numbers 219 for anybody who's not from the Northwest Indiana area, 219-879-0249. Our website, and it's not going to be on there because we just have it there at the clinic, but our website's animalclinicofmc.com. The address is 1943 South Woodland Avenue. That's in Michigan City. That's on Woodland Avenue, just down from Paws Road. So we're close to the high school. So that's the main information there. It's Animal Clinic of Michigan City. So you can get a hold of them. The ASPCA 101 common, let's see, what's it say? Let me read this off for everybody out there. 101 things you didn't know could harm your pet. And if we get a big rush in and we run out, I will apologize, because I didn't think that I would be putting this out there. So I didn't.
Your
It's a
fault,
good
Mary
point.
Ann.
So
Yeah, my
if you guys come in and we don't have any, I will apologize, because we'll probably, after this, we'll probably have to order some. But their website is www.aspca PET, okay, INSURANCE, so ASPCA Pet Insurance.com /101 CLA. And that's actually the site that should take you, if I understand this right, directly to the same
That brochure. Right.
Yeah,
that's
that's
awesome. And
great. That's
you
great
mentioned
info.
something that I wanted to touch base on. You said, these are accumulated by the most calls that they get. And you said poison control. Is it the same poison control we call for any concerns,
The
Meaning human
poison,
and animals?
Yeah, I mean, is it the same poison control?
there is.
Wow.
Poison control does do that. If I remember right, and again, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, I think that they now have a branch for that, but there is actually 2 pet poison sites
Wow.
as well.
That's neat.
I can't remember if it's Poison Center, actually, I think, is, if you're going to look it up.
I'm going to try to Google it. I'm just curious to know, I've actually called poison control over silly things, but I panic for a second and think I just have to have someone else tell me that it's silly.
I believe, and like I said, I'm not going to guarantee this. I believe that because they probably do, I think that they probably either have a direct line to the pet poison, or it's a branch of their own, because I can't honestly imagine that somebody wouldn't call in about that. And
Right.
I can't honestly imagine, because of the scope of toxicology, that there would be, unless you are a true to God toxicologist, that somebody would be able to sit there and go, oh yeah, in the horse that's there, but not in the person, but in the this and the that and that, So they probably have a set or a section basically for humans and a section for animals.
That makes sense.
Yep.
So if you just still called regular American Association of Poison Control Centers, I'm looking at the official website. I'm just curious to see if there's a
Well, let me throw this out there too. And maybe
Please.
while you're looking that up, Doc can answer this.
Sure.
Mary Ann, who's listening to Laporte, says, you guys had mentioned ticks. I caught the back end of it. Are you going to discuss ticks and pets today?
Yes, let's
So
discuss
if you
ticks.
wouldn't mind, Doc, can you kind of elaborate on
Yeah,
the Dr. Scott Baldwin theory on
Can I,
ticks?
before we go into ticks, can I just at least list the poison control
Yeah,
number?
please.
This is just regular American Association of Poison Control Centers. Call them, and I'm assuming if you have a question, you can't reach your vet for whatever reason, call poison control, and at least they can direct you to somebody until you can get a hold of
Right.
your own vet. So 1-800-222-1222. That's the American Association of Poison Control Center. Okay,
And
Dr. Tix.
I do know, before we jump to this, I do know that for any of you
Thank
that
you
are
for
kind
that.
of like me and still like, I like phone books. I'm not a web person per se. I like to grab something in my hand. So for all of you that don't have easy access to the website, the phone books of the past, and I haven't looked at new ones, but they all usually in the front section that has your police and your fire stations and sheriffs and everything. They actually, there is a number down there for poison control, and there has been for a long time. I'm going to
good
hope
point.
and assume, because I haven't looked at, over the last 4 or 5 years for the new phone books, I haven't looked into that, so I'm not going to guarantee that they're still doing that as small as they've become. But
Hopefully.
if you have an old one, it's in there.
Yeah.
So ticks.
Okay, yes.
Well, let's see. What do we got? About 15 minutes. So
Look
we're-
at him. I could talk on this subject, Doc,
Yeah.
I know
for about an
ticks-
hour, Rick.
ticks are-
We'll
Larry.
try to do the
You just
very
go for it.
short and I'm going to do, let's say, short and opinionated
Okay.
version.
Cool.
For us at our clinic, for all of the people that are just now thinking about ticks, we've been seeing ticks since about 1st February. And I know that blows a lot of people's minds. The first set of ticks that you usually see at about that time are the small ones that you barely see anyhow. And to really throw in where did these come from? It's freezing outside, there's snow and everything else. A lot of those, we'll call them baby ticks for lack of better terms, and anybody who is into more appropriate lingo, again, I'll apologize. The baby ticks tend to overwinter on our nice furry friends, the mice and the rats and et cetera, squirrels, et cetera. So if you have that, I have an inside only cat, how to get this tick on him. He's never gone outside. There's 3 to 6 inches of snow outside. It's the mice, most likely.
Yuck.
And I don't, and knowing how good mice and rats are, I don't want anybody ever to sit there and go, well, it can't be that, because there's absolutely no way I can have those into my house. Rats can chew through concrete.
Wait.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
Oh yeah, that rats can chew through concrete. That's
Did you know
Yuck.
that?
I did not, but I have a very irrational fear of rats and mice. Most things
Really?
I can talk myself out of. I have a very irrational fear of mice. So, yuck. I can't get past the thought, let alone.
This on YouTube.com is awesome to see her,
Just a little
cringe there,
squirmy.
Dr.
Okay.
Ball. Throw them out, doctor. Keep going.
But so anybody that thinks I'm in this underground bunker and I can't have rats or mice, that's you're fooling yourself. So that aside, just to throw this out, so we start seeing rats. Then your very first set that you'll see at the beginning are your little babies or your nymphs. Basically, they overwintered there, and then they'll start to go through their adult cycles. They actually molt just like a snake would, so to speak. They'll go through, I think it's 4 or 5 stages before
Really?
they die. Some ticks will live 2 to 3 years through those cycles. Some ticks only live a season, and then the eggs will over season. You have some ticks that will be adults in the spring, some ticks that will be adults in the summer, some ticks that will be adults in the fall. So it depends on the species of the tick and where you're at, and et cetera. Ticks carry diseases. That's kind of a simple one. We all are starting to hear, at least in the last 10, 15 years, at least in this part of the world, about Lyme's disease, because the heartworm tests that we're all using, most all veterinarians are using now, also test for Lyme's disease. So we basically have a dual purpose test, a heartworm test, Lyme's test, and that's what most people say, heartworm, Lyme's test nowadays. It also tests for a couple other tick diseases. So we know that there is a lot larger prevalence of, in this case, at least Lyme's disease than we once thought, coming from ticks. I won't get into this species carries, this species carries, this species carries, because that seems to change about every 12 to 18 months anyhow.
Wow.
But just know that ticks carry diseases. Fleas do too, but since you just asked about ticks, we'll stick with ticks. So they carry their diseases. The old adage, especially with Lyme's disease, where it's the seed tick, and if you get down into true terminology, seed tick was actually only one stage of the Ixodes scapularis tick. It wasn't all of them. They actually thought that at one point in time that only that one level or that one stage of the tick carried Lyme's. We now know that it's all the stages and actually pass from mommy tick into her egg. So baby tick hatches with Lyme's disease. It's also held over. So if you have what they'd call a naive tick that doesn't carry it, but they jump on a deer that carries Lyme's disease, boom, he's now infected, and every one of his offspring is potentially infected as well. The mice tend to be, that was one of the stages that they found out early on, were carriers of Lyme's disease. They kept it going in the environment into the Northeast. As far as there's an anthropological study, they found a tick from embedded in amber from the days of the dinosaur. They actually were able to find the same spirochete, which is a corkscrew type bacteria, and that's what a Lyme's bacteria is it's a corkscrew. It's a spirochete. They found the same bacteria from that tick's abdomen in the amber that dated all the way back to the dinosaurs. So Lyme's disease has been around since the dinosaurs. Again, that was one anthropological study. So if you get to a person that didn't read that one and they tell you that I'm full of it, that I'll go for that. I found it to be a very interesting article. I like to, that kind of stuff when I come across, it's pretty cool. I'm not going to say it's the same bacteria. Because the Borrelia, which is the cause of Lyme's disease, Borrelia burgdorferi, is the Lyme's disease causing bacterial spirochete. But there are other Borrelias as well, so, and they can cause their own things. So all they said was that it was Borrelia. It was related. Who knows, through thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years of mutation, how much it's changed. Maybe it was the granddaddy of them all. Maybe it wasn't. But so that's been around forever. Ticks obviously have been around since the days of dinosaurs as well. Let's see.
If our dog comes in and you find a tick, or you're petting the dog at night and you feel something and see a tick that's already attached, what do we do once it's attached? I know there's a lot of different preventative things, but what do we do once your dog already has a tick?
I mean, like if you see it, like it looks like a pimple. It looks like...
Oh, it doesn't look like a pimple.
What does it look like? I mean, because a lot of us don't know.
Well, especially if it's just started, you're going to
Well, you got to be careful when you're doing that because there are a lot of little black growths that are on animals, and I've had people come in trying to rip this tick off, and it was
that poor.
It was something completely different, and so you got to make sure it's a tick. The easiest way to make sure it's a tick is if it's got 6 or 8 legs, it's a tick. If you can't find any legs, most likely it's not a tick. That's kind of the easiest one. The big ones that are full of blood are easy. You can, you know those ones. It's a little bitty thing.
Doc, do they burrow into the skin of the dog? Like, because we were...
You're thinking of, do they actually sit there and like screw their heads in?
Yes, exactly.
No, not really. What they do is, and if you look at their heads on a microscope, they actually have 2 parts, basically I don't know that I want to even try to use any type of terms, but they're barbs. They got two pieces that actually have multiple barbs on them, and what they'll do is it's kind of like getting a cockleburr or something else into hair. Okay, it goes in a little bit, and then those barbs keep it from coming back out, and a little more and a little more and a little more. So they actually push their mouth parts in, and then they release basically a form of organic cement, which sticks them into that area, and that's important too, because if you could snap your finger, that tick got in there, released its cement, and you can snap your finger and it kills it. That cement actually takes a while to dissolve. So when a tick is done feeding, they're stuck on the dog, depending on the tick, whether they want to be or not, because of that cement, and that basically has to dissolve out before they can drop out.
Would it be the same, just to kind of on a side note, for an animal and a human? Does that same thing happen to a...
That's the tick. That's the tick's thing.
That's how they do.
Yeah. That's the tick and not who it's on. They release this basically cement around them to keep them attached while they're feeding. So,
okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I'm curious if your dog would come in and you would see that a tick on them again or find it in the evening, but its body is not yet under the skin, just its head, just where it's stuck. Is it okay to remove the
body
tick?
should not be under the skin. The body should
That's what I'm saying. If the body, if you can see it, so you know it's a tick.
Yeah.
But the head is just...
The head's in. I hate to even say anything on that because I'm liable to get a lot of people in trouble. If you talk to human nurses and doctors, they'll say, you got to be really careful on how you take them out, and you do. But to go back onto what you said, I want to, because I've heard this a lot too. And I've seen times where things like this has happened. So this is not common. When people talk about how the tick's burrowed under the skin, only the head. If the actual body is under the skin and the skin has grown over the body of a tick, which is strange. I've not ever seen it. I've heard about it, but I've never seen it. That is because there's been enough irritation and whatnot that it's basically cut the skin, and the skin's gone through its normal thing. The tick won't do that because the tick gets under the skin, it can't get back out,
stuck,
and then it's just basically committed suicide. And your normal genetics, so to speak, of bacteria and whatnot, they won't do that. They're not going to sit there and put themselves in a situation where they can't propagate or they can't carry on their species. So that is kind of a misnomer. But if they get their head in there, there are some actual they're not new, but there are some interesting, we call them tick pullers out there that you can actually get in between the skin and the body of the tick and take them out. That's probably the easiest thing. I've heard of people go, well, you just grab them and pull. If you're going to do something like that, what I want everybody to know is you have to look at your tick and make sure you got the head.
Yeah.
Because if you leave the head, that is now two things. Number one, it's a site of infection because it's basically like you left this baby microscopic straw. So you're letting things from the outside world get into your skin. The second thing is when you do that, what you've left in there are all the mouth parts of the tick, which has all the let's say tick spit and everything else that now carries its stuff in it. So you basically kind of set yourself up for a problem, or your animal. So this kind of goes for all species. So no, you have to make sure that head comes out.
So you can remove it without calling. I mean, you could remove it without immediately calling.
If you do it right, yeah. I mean, there's. I mean, how
See,
many?
I'd be afraid.
Your parents, your grandparents. I mean, it's not like everybody was running to their local barber to have ticks removed.
Right.
Back, in the 1800s. So yeah, it can be done. It just needs to. The big thing is the head has to be out.
I know that's what we do if we find one on the dogs, not crawling. I mean, we use a prevention, but
yeah. Prevention's the best, and some of the newer preventions are exceptional. There's a couple of them out now. Actually, one of the newer ones that's a pill for fleas and ticks. They've done some pretty neat study. Actually, both of the new pills for fleas and ticks have done some pretty good studies that show they will cause tick detachment at set times.
Oh.
And so if you have a dog come in it's full of ticks and you give the pill, then you put them in a cage with a nice white sheet or something like that, it'll actually help cause tick detachment.
Wow.
Wow, that's very heavy.
So that's some of the newer products are really good. Some of your older products, let's say the older veterinary products,
Is that us?
Yeah, somebody. Some of your older products will cause the ticks to die, and then eventually they'll fall off.
Okay.
And then your really old products that are on your poison list, your permethrins, they'll kill the tick.
Go ahead.
They'll kill the tick, but it's not quite as good. It's not quite as easy. It's not quite as effective. Am I doing something wrong?
No, our producer has her door wide open,
Gotcha.
and she has you blaring in the speakers.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh, funny. I heard the noise. Thought it was weird.
But
Brenda. I'm just kidding. I just made up a name.
depending on which prevention, and this is my attempts at advertisement, which I'm not a good advertiser. So basically my take home on this is, if you're not getting your flea tick stuff from a veterinarian, you're probably not doing your pets a service. You're probably doing them a disservice. And that'll be kind of where I leave that because we deal with that a lot. I hear a lot about how, I'm using blah, 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 and it's not working. And I've heard a lot of them. So, somebody could send you a text, go, what about? Depends on where you get them, what you got, where they came from, how many trips they've made through wherever. Did they go over to Europe first and then come back, and maybe they went through the Antarctic before they got back here and they froze and etc. So my take home point on your flea tick prevention and your heartworm prevention is if you're not getting it from your doctor, use at your own risk, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because that's probably flea season. And flea season kind of starts here before too long and really ramps up about October to throw out that cool, oh my God, I can't believe that. But, I hear all the time through most of the year about how, well, I'm using so-and-so product and it's just obviously not effective. It's just not. Dr. Dryden is pretty much the flea guru, and we'll kind of throw this in with your ticks too, but the flea guru, and he works K-State, and he travels to the flea areas of the world, which surprisingly enough is Tel Aviv and Florida. So he goes back and forth and tries to collect all the nastiest fleas that are resistant to everything under the sun. And somebody goes, well, how do you do that? There's a way, trust me. I don't know. I don't understand it all, and I can't imagine how you could enjoy your life doing that, but he does. But once a year, once every 6 months to a year to sometimes 18 months, depending on what he's doing, he actually runs all the products through. He keeps colonies of fleas from different lines.
Wow.
And he runs them through all the products that are essentially out there, have been out there and whatnot, and he goes through and does his studies on the resistance issue. And for the most part, most of our products that have been veterinary products since literally, let's see, our first really good veterinary product, I think, came out in 94, 3 or 4, maybe 2. It's almost as effective now as it was then. All right, there's a little bit, and I'm talking like, it'd be like going in and taking your math test as a senior in high school, and you only get a 99.
Wow.
And everybody out there is going, it's still an A. Well, yeah, so that's kind of your difference. It's 99% versus 100% now. So most of your products or your veterinary products, really there's not a lot of resistance to them, and he does those studies. So when I hear the person come in and go, well, obviously product X is now resistant, usually the first thing I say is, where did you get product X, and how many trips did it make, and do you know that the place that makes it is actually only so many hours away, but if this has been shipped for the last 3 weeks, that's probably the problem. So
30 seconds or less.
Good
Thank
point.
you so much. Awesome.
Yes, thank
Dr.
you.
Scott
We'll
Baldwin.
definitely do it
Phenomenal.
again. We'll definitely do it again in the next month or two and have a whole new set of questions. So good deal. Keep that sugarless gum and mint and candy put up so the dogs can't get it.
And give Dr. Scott a buzz, 219-879-0249, Animal Clinic of Michigan City. Thank you, Dr. Scott.
Thank you.
You're
You're very
awesome.
welcome.
What a great show. Rick Federici.
Mary Anthony, thank you.
AM 1420, WIMS, Michigan City, a Girard Media Company station.